Hi guys, welcome back to Retro Reactions, and we're going to do the second of the two David Hoffman 1979 computer store videos. The first one was 1979 kids like this were considered nerd geniuses, and I gave you the little story of, at the beginning of it, how I was the one, this guy, who actually tracked down the kid in the video using the power of social media about 2 years ago. And the way I did it was I got his first name, knew he was from Cedar Rapids, he's 12 in the video, it's 1979, so I worked out when he was going to graduate. I worked out the 2 years that he could have turned 18, and then I basically just turned into a stalker, checked their school records, and as if by magic, there was fortunately only one J. Looked him up on Facebook and got lucky again because his profile picture basically looked like the picture that you're seeing on the screen now. It was the same basic feature. Pinged him in true stalker style and he said yes, it was me, fantastic, and we just exchanged and we're connected on Facebook to this day, so that's wonderful. Now, next video is Computer Store Manager Predicts the Future. Now this is the second video. You'll see Jay and his dad in the background on this one briefly, but this one focuses more on the store manager. Now, I've had no success whatsoever in tracking down a store manager, unfortunately. Now, my guess is, without wanting to be a bit of a downer, it's 1979. He looks like he's kind of in his late 30s, I think. It's probably the earliest he can be. So, yeah, you're kind of talking. I mean, if we err on the side of caution and say that he's 30. That kind of still puts him into his 70s, which there's no reason why he shouldn't still be ticking, but yeah, tracking him down could be a little bit tricky because he's probably not likely to be on Facebook. Anyway, let's play the video and let's see what he's got to say. Now, I mean, listen to this guy. I mentioned it in the other video. They're really articulate, these guys, and they really talk about using computers in a really 1979. That was your first wave, and so people were very they used to talk about computers as, and this guy uses this kind of wording, a reflection of your own creativity. You can do, basically it was it's intuitive, you'll learn to express yourself in it. They were there was a lot of I'm less articulate clearly than the guys in the video because I'm stumbling. I can't think of the word. Anyway, there's a lot of possibilities with it. It was still very early. Where could you go with computers? And of course, in the late 70s, there was a lot of combination of two things: the positivity about automation and also the fear of automation, that the microchip was going to cost a lot of jobs. I mean, it's the same story that you've got nowadays. But yeah, I mean, you hear the guy sort of talk about a 3-day week, and of course the problem is you don't get that. What you do is if automation comes along, your employer's not going to let you work 20 hours and pay you for 40. They're just going to cut half the staff. Unfortunately, we live in a capitalist society, and that's just the way it works, basically. So yeah, that's it. So I'm not entirely sure how we're ever going to get to a 3-day working week, because I just think that we're going to, yeah, I'm just struggling to see however it would happen, because I just think that whatever you're about making money, how are you going to go to a 3-day working week? How? Because as soon as you save any time, people will do the maths, and they'll equate that to bodies, and they'll say, we don't need these 2 people, we don't need these 5 people, or these 500 people. Get rid, we can do the same job now with so many people. I've gone off on a completely different tangent to what this video is about. I apologise. Let's play the videos before I continue to ramble. I apologise for getting adverts. I really must get rid of these.
A computer is an educational device. It is in fact a direct reflection of your own imagination, your own intelligence, your own programming skills. And once you are given the freedom in which to create things and to see the immediate response on the screen, then then it becomes a very enjoyable experience. You go on to involve yourself in many other things. To that end, there have arisen a number of users groups, one of which is in this area, and that is a very useful notion, in that you can go to these users groups and you can see other individuals who have had much broader experience perhaps than you have, and there you can broaden your own experience with the computer.
Yeah, I have a son that's 15 years old, and I was trying to develop some type of an interest in electronics. I am myself an electrical engineer and interested in the computer field, and associated through change of technology, I must get into it deeper. My son, now 15, has had an interest in electronics towards computers, but he was undecided. I had no way of developing his interest and mine. I didn't want to push him into this field. I purchased a mini computer, microcomputer, which we call now, as a hobby, and it became quite stimulating to both of us, to the point where it was disturbing to our family that we're spending more time programming in our off times than paying attention to the remainder of the family, and it has caused a great interest in my child. I feel with the future of the technology in changing towards computers, I wanted to continue on, so we went and we bought a large number of books. Programming, we self-taught ourselves since there were no courses available at that time. It seems to be a very fantastic and hypnotic field. Once you start, you just can't stop. It's something you can't explain.
To the question of what is all this microcomputer and computer business going to do to our society? In the past, many levels of technology have stratified our society. I see computers, especially microcomputers, as creating a whole different manner of technology, or rather of society, in that there's going to be a vertical stratification in society. There are going to be those truck drivers that can deal very simply and very easily with a terminal and will be capable of getting their delivery schedules out of the terminal. There will be those truck drivers that will not. In the same light, there will be those MDs who will have and use the computer as a tool, and then there will be those MDs who prefer to look at medicine as very strictly as an art, one that should not be approached by a computer
completely
or any totally objective device. Certainly that you can see from those two examples that we're talking about housewives that deal with computers and housewives that don't, cab drivers that do and don't, so on and so on it goes. As to this question of information society, those that will deal with the computer will be far and away ahead of those that do not. Computers are designed to eliminate tedium in our lives. If a computer does not do that, the probability is that you really didn't need a computer to begin with. You probably needed more arms and legs. It's going to be very interesting. The future, this question of how many jobs are going to be created and how many jobs are going to be totally obsoleted by the computer. A computer really has never obsoleted a need to be obsoleted. The case is that we are humans and we are much more adaptable to our environment than the computer is to its own. We should be the ones that adapt and let that computer take over the tedium, so then that 3-day work week really does become reality.
Let's just continue. There we go. Okay. Yeah, so the 3-day week. I mean, that's an interesting video, isn't it? And that was the thinking even back then in 1979. But yeah, I mean, the takeaway from that video is, for me, I just can't help but start to sort of pick up on the stuff about the 3-day working week. And I mean, it's interesting. He makes a comment. He says that computers has never obsoleted work that didn't need to be obsoleted. And yeah, I mean, it's an argument that you could spin two ways. It doesn't really get fully explored, I don't think, a lot. And really, now's the time to be exploring it, but as a society, but we're not going to do that. We're going to wait until it's probably too late. But I mean, here's the risk with it for me, is at what point do you stop? Because if you, let's take the taxi driver example, because that's just kind of a clear-cut one. An easy one, sorry. You've got 200 taxi drivers, and you invest in driverless cars, so you don't need the taxi drivers. But and now you could say, well, taxi driving gives you a bad back, bad shoulder, arguably doesn't pay that amazingly well. You work completely antisocial hours. Why in God's name would you want to do it when you can automate that, have a driverless car, and those guys can go off and do something more intellectual and use their brains instead of giving themselves a bad back? But the thing is, they're not just, if you've got 1,000 taxi drivers, you're not going to have 1,000 computer programmers. You're not going to have 1,000 people operating the software that manages and supports the driverless cars. The jobs just aren't there when you get rid of them. That's the danger with it for me. And this is the bit that no one's talking about. Everybody's taking the argument that, yeah, it takes away the tedium, it takes away the thing, but ultimately it's taking away the work, it's taking away the jobs, which is fine if they can move on to something genuinely that's better, more kind of higher, maybe intellectually and less physically demanding, and pays, this is the critical part, pays at least the same amount of money, or ideally more. Because if it can't do that, then yeah, it's technical progress, but it's no good for that poor sod that's actually just lost his job due to the automation. And this isn't getting explored, I don't think, anywhere near enough. And really now's the time to be discussing it, because in 30, 40 years, when we've got sort of 30-40% unemployment and people are like, damn, want to do something about this, it's going to be too late. I mean, I could make a video and rant about this all day long. I probably need to find a video, actually, that's more specific to it so I can rant about it, because I've kind of gone off on a complete tangent, and I apologise. But this video is excellent. What this video does is sums up the enthusiasm of the time. It's 1979, it's that first wave of computers. Everybody's very positive about them, the impact they're going to have. Everybody's very excited about them. They're getting involved in computer clubs, users groups. Yeah. So, I mean, thanks to David Hoffman for capturing those two wonderful videos at the time, because there's not too many that are like this around, that are still, well, maybe there was a lot filmed at the time, but I can't find them. There's really only these two, and a handful maybe of others that were more filmed for commercial purposes, perhaps. But these are kind of real life, so, yeah. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I shall see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.